There comes a moment in life when the silence becomes deafening, an internal echo that starts as a whisper, then grows and grows until it becomes impossible to ignore. I remember one morning, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I saw someone successful, a stable career, friends, a comfortable home, but inside, an abyssal void. It was as if I was playing the lead role in a movie I never chose to act in. Did you know that scientists have discovered that mirrors can create illusions of identity? If you stare at your reflection for 10 minutes in a dark environment, your face begins to distort and change. Some report seeing strange faces, others see bizarre creatures or even deceased relatives. This is called the Troxler effect. Our perception gets confused when we look at ourselves for too long. What if we are living this illusion in our daily lives without realizing it? How many times have you looked in the mirror and seen a version of yourself that you didn't recognize? If you've ever felt that deep void inside, as if you were living a life that doesn't belong to you, perhaps someone else's life, or a version of yourself that you never chose to be, then you know the weight of that feeling. Even if you're not yet sure who the real you is, something inside is calling for attention, like a silent scream that echoes deep within the soul. It's uncomfortable, unsettling, but also filled with meaning. This is the call of the soul, an echo that emerges from the depths of our being. Sometimes it comes subtly, like a slight unease upon waking, almost imperceptible but persistent. Other times, it bursts forth with full force, like a storm that sweeps away the illusions we've built over the years. For me, it was a combination of these two extremes. At first, it was just a tightness in the chest, a faint feeling that something was off. Over time, this feeling grew, becoming impossible to ignore, until I finally realized I could no longer pretend that everything was okay. The ancient Stoic philosophers teach us that pain is an invitation to transformation. Marcus Aurelius said, "Obstinacy can be cured by reflection." And that's exactly what happens when we heed the call of the soul. We are invited to reflect on who we truly are and what we truly want. But here's the truth. Answering this call requires courage. It demands that we face the unknown, challenge others' expectations, and walk without maps. I know how scary this can be. When I decided to leave a corporate job to pursue a passion I barely understood at the time, I felt fear. Fear of failure, of being judged, of losing everything I had achieved. But I also felt something stronger, a certainty that staying where I was would be even worse. As Buddhism says, suffering arises from resistance to change, and changing, as scary as it may be, is the first step to finding our inner truth. The good news is that those who hear and follow this call transform. We begin to see the world with new eyes, to feel life with more intensity, to inhabit our own bodies, as if finally coming home. There are no promises of ease, nor guarantees of acceptance, but there is something infinitely greater waiting, the freedom to exist without disguises. When was the last time you stopped to listen to the call of your soul? What was it trying to tell you? Today, take 10 minutes to be silent with yourself. Turn off your devices, sit in a quiet place, and ask yourself, what do I truly want for my life? Don't seek immediate answers. Let the silence speak for you. It is not the wind that determines your destiny, but the way you adjust your sails. Confucius, between shadows and reflections. The conflict between the self and the world's expectations. We live surrounded by invisible mirrors, not the glass ones, but those forged by others' expectations. From an early age, we learn to mold ourselves to fit standards we don't even know the origin of. But what if all of this is just a big theater? Studies show that 85% of our daily decisions are made on autopilot. This means we spend most of our time not being ourselves, but simply reacting to what others expect. Like invisible puppets of a script we never wrote. Today, observe your own decisions. How many of them are truly yours? How many are based on the fear of judgment? I remember a time when my life seemed perfect to others. I had a stable job, an apparently solid relationship, and a predictable routine. But inside me, something screamed, "This isn't who you are." It was as if I were a shadow projected on the wall, a distorted version of myself. This feeling of disconnection between who we are and who others expect us to be is a universal conflict. In Buddhism, there is a practice called mind observation, which teaches us to identify when we are living merely to satisfy external expectations. When I started practicing this observation, I realized how much I had abandoned my own dreams to please others. I was trapped in a prison I had built myself. But then came the question that changed everything. Who am I beyond what others expect of me? This question arose in a moment of crisis when the mirror of my life began to crack. It was painful, but also liberating. As the Taoist philosopher Zhuangzi says, the sage does not seek to be seen, but to be true. Authenticity, as scary as it may be, is the path to inner peace. Here's the truth. Living in the shadow of what others want is not living. It's merely existing. And yet, breaking free from these shadows requires courage. When I decided to follow my own path, I faced resistance. Some people didn't understand my choices. Others simply drifted away. But at the same time, I discovered something unexpected. Those who remained were the ones who truly mattered. They saw my truth and embraced it. How many of your daily decisions are based on what others expect of you? What would your life be like if you started acting based on what you truly feel? Today, make a list of 3 areas in your life where you feel you are fitting in rather than being yourself. It could be at work, in relationships, or even in the small choices of daily life. Next to each item, write a concrete action you can take to start changing this. It doesn't have to be something grand sometimes. The smallest steps have the biggest impact. It is not about finding who you are, but about creating who you want to be. Friedrich Nietzsche. The leap into the void. Boldness and fear on the path to authenticity. There comes a moment when we find ourselves at the edge of the abyss. Behind us, the known. Ahead, the unknown. For me, this moment came when I decided to leave a stable career to pursue something I didn't even fully understand. My heart raced, my hands sweated, my mind screamed, what if it goes wrong? The human brain reacts to the fear of change in the same way it reacts to real danger. To it, changing jobs can seem as threatening as facing a lion. But here's the key. Fear is a sign of growth, not danger. Seneca wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we dare not venture. It is because we dare not venture that they are difficult." This phrase helped me see the leap into the void not as an act of extraordinary courage, but as an act of basic trust in myself. Knowing that the wings only open after the leap was what propelled me to take that first step. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Fear is a constant companion on this journey. It disguises itself as prudence, convincing us to wait, to take a step back, to reconsider. But here's what I've learned. Fear never completely disappears. It just changes form. When I started walking towards my authenticity, the fear didn't go away. It transformed into a reminder that I was alive, that I was growing. But there is another type of fear that is even more paralyzing. The fear of living a life that isn't ours. This fear whispers softly, but it never silences. It asks us, do you really want to reach the end of your life and realize you lived for others? It was this question that made me take a deep breath, close my eyes, and jump. Not because I had all the answers, but because I knew staying where I was impossible. What is stopping you from taking the next step towards your truth? What is the biggest fear you need to face to move forward? Identify an area in your life where you feel you are holding back your true aspirations out of fear. Now, imagine that fear didn't exist. What would you do immediately? Write this action down and commit to taking a small step towards it in the next 7 days. Remember, small steps lead to big changes. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. Steve Jobs. The voice that breaks the silence. Finding the courage to be who you are. For years, my voice remained contained, not for lack of will, but because I learned it was safer to whisper. Then, one day, something inside me broke. I was in a meeting where they expected me to agree with something that went against my principles. But, for the first time, my voice broke the silence. It trembled, but it came out. And it was in that moment that I realized something. The truth may scare others, but it sets us free. Did you know there is a sound frequency called the note of the universe? According to scientists, the sound of the expanding universe resonates at the note B flat. It's as if the cosmos itself has a unique voice. And what if each of us has our own frequency, a unique tone that needs to be heard? Today, say something you are afraid to express, even if it's just to yourself, out loud. Feel the weight of your own voice in the world. But the soul has a peculiar way of breaking the silence. Speaking our truth is an act of courage. In Buddhism, there is a practice called true speech, which invites us to express our thoughts and feelings honestly, but also compassionately. When I started practicing this, I realized that not everyone around me was ready to hear it. Some drifted away. Others questioned my choices. But at the same time, I discovered something unexpected. Those who truly mattered began to draw even closer. They saw my vulnerability as an invitation to a deeper connection. Here's the beauty of this process. Giving voice to our truth not only transforms how others see us, but primarily how we see ourselves. It doesn't matter if the voice comes out trembling. If the truth comes in pieces, what matters is starting. As the Taoist philosopher Lao Tse says, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And once we take that step, there's no going back to the silence before. What truths are you holding inside? What would your life be like if you finally expressed them? Today, identify a recent situation where you felt you weren't completely honest with yourself or others. Write down what you wish you had said or done. Now, commit to expressing this truth even if it's in a journal, a private conversation, or even mentally. Small acts of authenticity can create big changes. Authenticity is the ability to show the world who you are without fear of judgment. Brené Brown, The Awakening of the Spirit. Freedom as the ultimate frontier. There was a moment when I realized something extraordinary. I was no longer explaining myself. Suddenly, it no longer mattered if others approved of my choices. It no longer mattered if my path made sense to others. For the first time, I simply was. Did you know that eagles renew all their feathers every 7 years? This process is called a complete molt. They literally transform over their lifetime. And us? Are we allowing ourselves to change? If you could reinvent yourself completely, without fear of the past, what would this new version of yourself be like? There was a moment in the journey of authenticity when something changes forever. For me, this moment came on a quiet morning as I walked alone on a forest trail. The air was fresh, the sound of birds echoed around me, and suddenly I realized something extraordinary. I was no longer explaining myself. I was no longer apologizing for who I was or trying to fit where I was never meant to be. It was as if an invisible weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I remember a phrase from the Taoist philosopher Zhuangzi that stays with me to this day. The fish does not need to know what water is, it simply lives in it. Similarly, when we find our inner truth, it becomes the natural environment in which we live. We no longer need to struggle against ourselves or try to fit into molds that were never meant for us. The freedom to be who we are becomes as natural as breathing. But I want to make something clear. This journey is not about perfection. It's about progress. There are days when I still find myself falling into the traps of external expectations. There are moments when fear still paralyzes me. But now, instead of punishing myself for it, I see these moments as opportunities to practice self-compassion. As positive psychology teaches, self-compassion is the first step to emotional resilience. If you could choose to live without fear of judgment or rejection, who would you be? What would you do differently? Today, write a letter to yourself. In it, express everything you feel about who you are now and who you desire to become. Don't hold back, dream big. Be vulnerable, be honest. After writing, keep this letter in a safe place. Open it again in 6 months and see how far you've come. If this journey resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. What spoke to you the most? What steps do you plan to take to follow your own call? Remember, you are not alone on this path. Together, we can inspire each other to live with more authenticity and courage. And if you wish to continue exploring these themes, subscribe to receive more content like this. Let's transform our lives together, one step at a time. You cannot cross the ocean without the courage to lose sight of the shore. Andre Gide. If the wisdom in this video resonated with you, leave a comment. What has your soul been trying to tell you lately? And if you wish to continue this journey of self-discovery, subscribe for more content like this. After all, the most incredible journey we can take is within ourselves. Have you been hearing the call of your soul? What does it seem to be trying to tell you? How many of your daily decisions are truly yours? And how many are based on the fear of judgment? What would you do if fear weren't in the way? What is the first step you can take today to move closer to your truth? If this video made sense to you, like and share it with someone who might need this reflection. In the comments, tell me, what has your soul been trying to tell you lately? Let's exchange experiences. And if you want to dive even deeper into this process of self-discovery, download my exclusive ebook, which is pinned in the first comment. Finally, continue this journey by watching the other recommended videos here on the screen. See you there.